The conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch filed the suit against the State Department for Huma Abedin's emails. They are describing this release as a major victory for them. Joining us from Judicial Watch tonight is Chris Farrell, the Director of Investigations and Research. There have been so many email dumps, Chris. Why is this one different?
Well, this is the 20th production in this case. This one's critical because it places classified information on the Wiener laptop. It beyond any doubt, according to the State Department themselves, proves that classified information was forwarded in an unlawful way. It's a direct violation of Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 793F, which is mishandling national defense information. I personally have investigated and prosecuted those cases as an Army counterintelligence special agent. I know that people have been jailed for a fraction, a tiny fraction of what has now been made public and documented through Judicial Watch's litigation. And so this really cries out for a legitimate investigation being done. Your earlier clip with Mr. Comey talking about intent is a fraud. There's no requirement for improving intent under that particular citation I gave you a moment ago. Intent is irrelevant. The fact that the loss or the mishandling of the national defense information occurred, that's the crime.
Chris, I want to follow up on that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but another Comey clip there where he said in testimony on the Hill, Abedin didn't have a sense she was violating the law.
It's
I've
irrelevant.
never heard of such a thing.
It's irrelevant, and no one, let me tell you, no one in the armed forces, the intelligence community, or law enforcement, no one listening to this program tonight who has ever had a security clearance would ever buy that kind of phony excuse. Comey already manufactured his get-out-of-jail-free card for Hillary Clinton, months before she was even subject interviewed in July. And that's been documented as well. Frankly, these documents could form the foundation for an indictment of Comey and Strzok, the investigator who is at the center of this entire nightmare of a security problem.
I'm glad you mentioned Peter Strzok, the FBI agent who sent those text messages that were pro-Trump, pro-Clinton, I should say, anti-Trump.
Right.
We've learned more recently. He was in the middle of basically running this investigation and looking through that laptop, in fact. The fact that we didn't know that then, right before the election, is that grounds now for the Justice Department to say, we need to reopen this, there needs to be a criminal investigation?
Absolutely, because on the 2nd of July, when Mrs. Clinton was interviewed, she wasn't even Mirandized. You had federal agents who had reason to believe the person sitting in front of them had committed a crime. And through the lawyering of David Kendall, what should have been a subject interview under oath of Mrs. Clinton turned into a coffee and donut session. And when she sat there and said she could not remember more than 30 some odd times, it doesn't pass the giggle test. No one in their right mind would believe that. And also, when someone says that, you pause the interview, you pull out her non-disclosure agreement, you have her review it and refresh her recollection, and then ask her to explain how she doesn't remember
Chris,
being briefed on this.
I've got a minute left. Let's say, for argument's sake, that everything you just laid out is 100% accurate, that there should be a criminal investigation, that there may have been serious wrongdoing here that they got away with. But what do you say to the viewer tonight watching this saying, you're relitigating old stuff. Hillary Clinton lost the election. Let's move on.
It has nothing to do with the politics of losing an election. What it has to do with is violating national security law and putting top secret sensitive compartmental information at risk, and not just at risk, but likely compromise to foreign intelligence services. Not just the information itself, but the sources and methods of collection. This is the gravest national security crime one can commit. It's not an administrative oops. This is a crime that borders on treason, and it's punishable at that level.
That there's investigations where conclusions were being reached before the evidence was actually looked at. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham wrote a letter this week to the FBI. This is part of what it said about the James Comey investigation of Hillary Clinton. They wrote in that letter, in part, it appears that in April or early May of 2016, Mr. Comey had already decided that he would issue a statement exonerating Secretary Clinton. That was long before FBI agents finished their work.
Or even interviewed her on July 4th.
There are evidently up to 17 people that had not yet been interviewed, and this is a very strong allegation. The FBI director, former FBI director, has a lot of explaining to do. He could have perjured himself. We asked him very directly. Remember, he appeared before the House Oversight Committee, the House Judiciary Committee. how did it that you interviewed Secretary Clinton on, I believe it was a Saturday, and then like Tuesday morning, they suddenly had the report out there. And then you have other people like Brian Pagliano and some of these other people, very nefarious types of activities out there. How is it that he's already ready to the conclusion if they haven't even done the interviews?
President Trump, his attorney, Jay Sekulow, he was on with Sean Hannity last night. Listen to what he said about it.
You've got James Comey now with emails going back and forth where he's drafting 3 months before they interview 16 witnesses, including the supposed target of the investigation, exoneration, basically a declination letter before they interviewed the witnesses. James Comey had the nerve to testify under oath that he had to come forward last July to make his statement because the whole process where Loretta Lynch met with President Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix cast doubt on the scope and nature of the investigation. Here's the fact. The fact is, evidently, he already made up his mind 3 months before the investigation really got underway. So this whole thing was a fraud on the American people.
How does not every American look at this and say, this is a rigged system?
Well, this is where you look at the deep state, and it comes right on the heels of a determination by the records division of the FBI saying we aren't going to release this information because there's a lack of public interest.
Yes, well,
are you kidding me? There were congressional subpoenas, there were congressional inquiries, Freedom of Information Act requests, none of this information given to the congressional investigators, but hats off to Senator Grassley and Lindsey Graham for going and getting this stuff.
Right, and hopefully
FBI's investigation into the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Fox News has obtained the original draft statement from then FBI Director James Comey about the Clinton situation. This comes as there is increasing concern tonight about how the Bureau handled both the Clinton case and the early investigation into the alleged collusion between the Russians and candidate Donald Trump. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here with the breaking details. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Brett. Fox News has obtained an early draft of Director James Comey's statement recommending against criminal charges in the Clinton email case, and it shows the term grossly negligent, which is a standard for criminal prosecution, was removed at least twice, among other edits that downplayed the mishandling of classified information. The early draft said there is evidence to support a conclusion that Secretary Clinton and others used the private email server in a manner that was grossly negligent with respect to the handling of classified information. Fox News has confirmed that FBI agent Peter Strzok made the edit, removing grossly negligent, and in July 2016, that was the language used by then FBI Director James Comey.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
In another key section of the draft, edits are made to downplay the prospect that Clinton's unsecured personal server used exclusively for government business was hacked. The early draft read, given that combination of factors we assess, it is reasonably likely that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email account. Reasonably likely was changed to possible. A letter from the Republican chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Ron Johnson, to FBI Director Christopher Wray contained the Comey draft. Both Johnson and another leading Senate Republican want answers about whether political bias influenced the email and Russia investigations.
There is a very good reason to suspect that people that were very early involved in the investigation and very deeply involved in it had biases against the president, and it's very unfair to the American people to have an agency with a reputation of the FBI that they would have political interference.
Senate investigators are suspicious that Agent Strzok is the one who made all or the majority of these edits, and they've asked the FBI as much, Brett.
Sure. You know, critics of all of this say, yes, this has to be looked at. There could be bias here and it should be investigated. But the FBI's job is to get convictions and let the courts decide about fairness. So what do lawmakers on the Hill say where this is going?
Well, what jumps out at me from this draft, Brett, is that when you look at the changes that are made, every single change really works in the favor of Hillary Clinton. It decreases rather than increases her legal jeopardy. I think the next step here is that people on the Hill want to know who exactly made the edits, because there is a footnote in the letter that refers to the FBI Office of General Counsel. And that got my attention because the other person who's been at the heart of the texting controversy this week is that FBI lawyer Lisa Page. Brett.